Hello and welcome to episode 40 of Just Keep Writing.
A podcast for writers, by writers, to keep you writing.
I'm Marshall.
I messed it up.
I'm Will.
And welcome to episode 40. It's a mess out the gate. So here we are. So team, how we doing? We hanging in there or what? Back to quarantine?
My day is, you go to the horse races, you put down some money on a horse, they open the gates, and it's just people running in dinosaur costumes. That's what my day's like right now.
So I didn't know where you were going with that. I almost spit my whiskey onto my desk because you just started talking about horse races and stuff. What the hell are you talking about?
That's how my day's going. You expected a horse race and you got dinosaurs, you know?
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Will, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Dinosaurs aren't running after me. I'm kind of happy.
Yeah. All right. Good. Keep the dinosaurs out, I guess. So top of the show, we should talk about what we've been doing and stuff. But I think let's start off by talking about our social media, how that's going, and our latest episodes. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great idea.
Will, go ahead. What are we doing on social media right now?
Twitter, we're always tweeting about the latest episode and just some of our favorite happenings going on in the world. Apex Magazine is being relaunched in Kickstarter, and we will talk. We've talked about that in the past, so it will still be going on by the time this episode drops. We are doing a book of the day on Instagram, so follow us at Just Keep Writing Podcast on Instagram, and we'll do some fun stories on Instagram as well. That's about it on the social media front.
Cool. So our latest episode came out last week. And it's a good one. People are stoked. So if you haven't heard, which if this is your first episode, welcome. If it's not, you may have heard the episode already, but we should just say we did interview Mary Robinette Call. Her book came out literally the day we're recording this. You're going to hear it much later. But her newest book, Relentless Moon, is out today. It's out now, I should say. And we had the pleasure of interviewing her, and it went really well, and it was a ton of fun. So definitely check out episode 38
of Just Keep Writing,
which is weird because there's another episode coming out after that. We're recording these out of order. This is what happens when you bank episodes. This is a little behind the scenes, but anyway,
it's called being prepared. We're structured. Yes. We're prepared. We have Maurice. By the time you're listening to this, Maurice was already on. We had so much fun interviewing him. Yeah. Check out his books. Buy everything by him and Mary Robinette.
And the one thing I want to say in regards to this, and that's why I'm talking about it, is if you like us interviewing folks, definitely give us some feedback in the Discord. Email us if you like the episodes. I've been getting some nice messages on Facebook and stuff like that from folks in the community, so it's been a lot of fun. So,
and don't forget, we have a Patreon account. If you love what we do and you want to hear more and you want more content from us, go ahead and click on that Patreon button and give us a follow and maybe subscribe.
Yeah. Leave us a couple bucks a week or an episode and it'd be great. We'd love that.
Bring it on.
So, gents, we participated in an event recently as well, which we should talk about.
Bum, bum, bum.
Do we want to talk about it?
Oh, yeah. We want to talk about it.
Okay.
We want to talk about it because that's how events are going to go for, I feel like, the next year in the writing community. So I think it's important to kind of highlight a couple of things that we experienced.
Yeah, and when you hear this, obviously the event would have been a few weeks ago, but the idea is, most conferences, including San Diego Comic-Con, which is in a couple of weeks as well, everything's going virtual. So in regards to that, we've talked about this on another episode before, but Writing Excuses Retreat, which is usually a cruise, has joined with Surrey in October, and they're going to be doing their conferences simultaneously, essentially. So there'll be some WXR exclusive stuff and then stuff that's happening just between both. So it'll be great. But in preparation for that, we got the community back together and it was a ton of fun. And it was basically called the WXR Summer Reunion. So it was open to alumni and folks who were planning on going on the cruise this year. And it was a long, 7 hours of drinking and socializing and popping from room to room. And so highlights for you guys. What do you think?
I started at 2 p.m. and I don't think we actually finished till midnight my time.
Yeah, I was definitely up till 2 a.m. on the East Coast time.
It was 2 a.m. East Coast is when Mary Robinette pulled the plug on the whole thing. But yeah, it did start at 5 Eastern. Yep. So it was a long time. But there was a lot of events. It was a lot of fun, I think. They did a recording, which I was kind of in charge of, that didn't go smoothly, sadly, but the recording happened. It was a Q&A, so that should come out at some point for Writing Excuses podcast. And yeah, I just had a blast chatting with you guys and seeing some folks from the community from the boat that I hadn't seen in a really long time. So I thoroughly enjoyed it once I got over the failures of my technology.
And that's definitely something to highlight for any of you guys doing a virtual con and things like that coming up. Failures are going to happen. We don't live in a world of perfect internet or technology. It is what it is. If you have failures in your virtual cons that you go to, please, by the grace of everything that's in you, take it easy on the people who are setting everything up. Like, sometimes shit just happens. And it is what it is. You know, and I'll speak for Marshall. He had 5 different backups and all of them failed.
Well, the only one that I needed, they abandoned, and that was the problem. Because Zoom failed on me, everything started failing. So anyway, it is what it is. But the staff, it doesn't hate me completely. They didn't fire me. So
I mean, hey,
not yet, at least.
They're not going to fire you. They love you.
Really hard to fire a volunteer. I'm just saying,
right?
But I mean, I think for me, what I took away from it was the way they set up the different breakout rooms and how you can go around, like, you know, Zoom teaching through Zoom. It's something I've done for my day job for 2 years, so it's very easy for me to do it. But for someone who's never done it before, like, I could see how that's intimidating because you're talking to yourself on a blank screen and you know someone's listening to you, but you don't know who. You don't get crowd feedback. You don't get a response from anyone, like things like that. But I'm excited for Surrey because of it. I know what to expect now. And the way, like I said, the way they set it up, it was super easy to use, which I think I appreciated that more than anything.
And the theme was neat too. They kept in the theme of the cruise, the rooms, you know, we were in the R bar, like we were on the boat and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun too. So there's a lot of little creative ways you can make a virtual event similar to a real life event. So that was a fun part. So what else we want to talk about? Oh, I have another conference coming up since we're talking about conferences.
Yeah.
The Mendocino Coast Writers Conference is coming up actually in a few weeks towards the end of the month when you hear this episode. And I have a novel critique coming up as well. And I decided to throw the first part of my current work in progress at this group, even though they are not sci-fi authors, or it's not the sci-fi fantasy section of the critiques, and I'm just very curious to see what feedback I get. So I'll let you guys know.
Did you give them the same thing from Writing Excuses last year?
I sure did.
Did you improve upon it?
I changed a few things, but I basically kept it the same.
Did you keep it the same because you were really happy with it and just needed to tweak it, or was it more of a timing issue?
Little column A, little column B. The timing issue, I got a scholarship for this event, honestly. It was it's a local event, and they've been trying to get me to go to it for a while. I actually know a couple of the people on the board, and I was going to pay to go if I could, because the vacation I normally go on that conflicts with it isn't conflicting this year. But then I found out there was a novel critique involved, and I didn't have time to deal with redoing anything, so I did resubmit that. And also, I part of me is, this is going to sound weird. I had a really bad critique in a group of folks that were not genre authors in college. And I think this may be my way of kind of seeing if that's going to stay consistent. How many years later? Almost 20 years later.
Well, and you got to mention that last year with WXR, and no fault to any of the structures or anything like that, but random pairings, you didn't have a pairing with anyone, one, who wasn't a person of color, and then 2, anyone who wrote fantasy or sci-fi again. So I'm interested to see if the feedback is the same from those people or if it's different.
Yeah. And so part of me wants to kind of redeem myself. Part of me wants to see if folks that don't normally write genre fiction can get into it. Because that's kind of important, don't you think? I mean, being able to, let's say you've never read fantasy or you don't read much fantasy and sci-fi and you read my story and you were halfway intrigued, that might be a good thing, right? I mean, or am I crazy?
No, I don't think you're crazy.
Thanks, buddy.
No, not at all. I gotta stop saying so if anyone's listening to this,
okay,
I'm cutting
so
it out.
I'm gonna cut this part out of the show. So I'm of two minds on this, Will. When I first started The Usual, and this is what I tell my students too, when I first started The Usual, I used to cut out all the ums and stuff. And a lot of it had to do with Will doing weird things and stuff while we were recording, and making weird sounds. So I'd cut that out. But then also, both of us say a lot, right? I say all the time. I tell my students this when they're presenting, try not to, but it's not the end of the world. It kind of depends on your audience too, right? So I'm not going to sit there and painstakingly try to edit all your ums and likes. So if you want to consciously do it or try to do it, cool. But I think folks know us by now, and I don't really think they care, if I'm being honest with you.
The reason I'm being so particular about it is because even the way that I'm speaking isn't the way that I was media trained. And I used to speak really clear and crisp, but now I'm reverting to, now I'm reverting back because I haven't been like in the media and in the spotlight constantly in a camera for like 10 years.
But think about this. This is a casual conversation between friends. Conversations between friends, and everybody listening knows that it's a conversation between friends. They're going to know that we're going to say and like and cuss a little bit and not give a shit. So cut yourself a break. It's okay.
Gotcha.
Can we keep that part in the episode? You said shit, and I appreciate it.
And I'm actually pretty good on this show and on The Usual. I've always been one of those people when I do podcasting, I try to keep it open to as many people as I can. I don't want to put explicit things on it, so I don't make it blatant. But I used to bleep out cuss words too on The Usual when we fuck up. But I kind of don't care anymore, and I feel like our listeners don't care either, right? And yes, I said fuck on purpose that time.
Great.
I'm guilty of saying at least every single word at least once.
Right. So
okay, where were we?
We are done with what we're talking about. So I think what we should do is go into basically the topic and what we want to discuss this week. And it has to do with critiques, correct?
It does. That's a perfect segue.
It's a perfect segue. It's almost like I planned it that way.
Right? I mean...
Or like 10 minutes ago, but yeah.
Hey. According to my recording stream here, sir, it is been 20 minutes ago, sir. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Give us a break.
So how do you guys want to do this? Should I set the scene? So Nick gave a portion of his novel to be critiqued by Will, and I'll let you guys take it from there.
Yeah. So many of you guys know, Will got to critique my stuff, and not really critique it. Will turned out to be a coach in it. And kind of helped me identify a lot of different things that either A, I was missing, or B, I didn't know. Will, can you kind of take us through the hero's journey that you used kind of for that critique method to pin down some areas of weakness of mine?
Sure. So I would really call what we did more of a story structure edit. It wasn't about giving, you did this wrong, you did that wrong, you should do this. It was looking holistically at Nick's story and really pointing out things that I really loved first, where I was lost, and where I needed clarity. And I was telling Nick that we write very similar with our first drafts, meaning we put everything in there in the kitchen sink. Everything.
Word vomit.
Yeah, it's word vomit, and it doesn't make sense. And where we think we were like, oh, this was so explained properly, there were great ideas in that kitchen sink. You know, there were some dishes we really liked, but we needed to remove most of them to really streamline it. So what I did, in order to structure this, to watch Nick put into place what he needed to do, I used the book Save the Cat Writes a Novel. I recommend this book to anyone who wants to structure. And I will say this, I am more of a discovery writer. But what I found out during doing NaNoWriMo so much is that I need to have some sense of structure to follow my plan, to have an endpoint.
No, like, can I ask you this? Can I ask you this? Would you call this an outline?
I would
or
call
would
it
you actually call it a structure?
I would call it a hybrid outline structure. Nick, do you want to explain from here where what we did?
Yeah.
Or do you want me to just go into it?
I was just thinking about one of our very first episodes, Marshall, when we had the pant liner episode.
Oh yeah, that's everybody's favorite title to an episode, by the way.
Was it really, or is that sarcasm? I don't know.
Oh, that's sarcasm. We got some weird feedback on that, but we were having fun with it. It was just for fun, but
yeah,
it's a hybrid between pantsing and outlining, essentially. So,
but Will's found the right one for it. It's called a structure.
So what I did was I used the Why Done It, Detectives, Deception, and Dark Side.
And that's because my current novel, Work in Progress, is a science fiction fantasy involving a mystery element to it as well. And so I have got this, obviously the hero's journey that's going on, my science fiction fantasy, but I really need to nail down the mystery element of it. And taking me through the whodunit portion was incredible. That really set me forward on things.
What did you learn from us setting up a structure in what you've already written?
I didn't progress past Act 1. And that's what I learned. I've written 50, 60,000 words, and none of it actually got past Act 1.
And how did that make you feel? Like, before we reviewed it, did you feel like you got past Act 1 and you were in Act 2 heading towards Act 3?
Yeah. It's the weirdest thing.
He's like, I'm there, man.
I just got a few more thousand words to write.
I was that makes me laugh in like a good way.
Right?
I'm laughing at you because I've been in the same position. Like, no, man, this story is progressing. I got it going. And no,
I wrote 60,000 words of a very flat main character, incredible kick-ass side partner, and
great side partner,
and
an actual villain. Jackson. I'm saying his name. He might change it, so don't hold him to it. But Jackson came back maniacal.
I might have to post that scene up as is and just let people get a taste of that one.
I wouldn't do that yet.
No? Okay.
No, so go ahead.
But yeah, I come to the point where it was like we got to... During this critique, I was able to fill out Act 1, and I was able to use multiple answers. And then we got to Act 2, and I was like, I don't know. Or I haven't written that yet. And so that really opened it up. And once Will kind of laid it out, this is the point of the book where you need to be doing this. Do you have these elements here to continue forward? I was missing a lot of it.
Yeah, as a third party to this, and obviously watching the text fly back and forth, and then our conversation with our writing group the other night, I think it's really interesting what you guys did. Now, in the context for our listeners, I think what's important to important distinction, I think, would be for you guys to. So, for example, we talk about alpha readers, we talk about beta readers. Would you even say this was one of those, Will, or this is a more of a structured coaching session to help structure the novel to move him forward to give it to an alpha reader? Does that make sense?
Yes. I was definitely not an alpha or beta reader. This was a story edit. I was really specifically looking for things that were going to help Nick develop the story and to streamline it in certain areas. And I didn't go into it thinking this. I went into it thinking I was just going to say, oh, I like this, or don't like this because I need clarity and I'm confused. That's how I originally read everything. But I read it again.
So you went into it with an alpha reader kind of mindset at first.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And what I learned a lot from reading Nick's work, because again, we really do write our first drafts very similar. We throw everything in that we're thinking in our head, and this is how you find the things that you like. It's actually kind of helping you develop the story. But when me and Nick talked, I wanted it to be something that he could help actually see where he's at. And in turn, it really helped me also pinpoint areas. And I think this goes for anything that you teach, because I teach hair classes and hair cutting. And when I review the fundamentals, it always makes me more well-minded of what I have to do in the daily, if that makes sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And we had a really nice discussion the other night discussing structure and 3-act structure and hero's journey and just things that I think we don't have to go into a work consciously necessarily thinking of these things, but before we do pass it off to an alpha or a beta reader, we have to make sure that when we go back through it, that the structure is there, that there is a clear beginning, middle, and end, and the story progresses, right? And I think that's really what I loved about watching you guys go through this process is that, and it's not, I want to bring it back to the community because I want folks to know that it's okay if you get stuck and you're like, is this just all one big act one? Like, give it to somebody, talk to somebody, or look online and look at these other structures that are out there and see, you can find this stuff online pretty easily, and then put them side by side, put the structure you in your head, what you'd like to follow. Like if you're like George Lucas and you were really a big fan of, Hero with a Thousand Faces and the hero's journey, you can put Star Wars Episode 4 right next to the hero's journey and follow it and progress it all the way down. Right. So being able to do that, I think is as a writer is really important, if that makes any sense.
It does. Yeah. Go ahead, Nick.
It's a new skill set to put in my toolbox, really. Because at the end of the day, and we've talked about it in our writing group before, where we know these tools, we know what they are. Are we perfect on them? No. I just think maybe we just don't dive deep enough into our own toolbox. At sometimes and one of the points I want to make sure I tell myself and do myself is it's okay to pull up a document. It's okay to pull something up and actually look at it. Like you shouldn't be afraid to do that. It's no shame on you as a writer, at all. But that's something I found on is bringing up the actual document, which leads to 60,000 words in an act one.
But also like, we've talked about some of these structures on the show too. Dan Wells uses the 7-point story structure, and then there's obviously the 3-act structure that movies and TV uses and stuff like that. Like that, you can really just kind of go side by side with your current work and say, am I doing these minimal things right before I give it over to somebody to read?
The tool that I used using the hero's journey and the 3-act structure was just one step of me going to edit and give Nick feedback, because there's another tool that after he sends me the second draft that I want to use, and it's called TRDs. It's plot twists, plot reversals, and moments of heightened danger. This is a really great way to really make sure you're at crucial events. You're going to can't wait to have a page turner, and it's going to be a quicker paced. what I found that really works is that it depends on the story for yourself and also for anyone that you are going to help critique their novel or coach them through the novel, because it was a mixture of me really asking Nick questions and telling him where I was lost, and then putting those questions and where his plot beats were into that 3-act structure, Hero's Journey. Now, the next drafts we'll read, I'll do TRDs, which again are plot twists, plot reversals, and moments of heightened danger. This way, we can even get the pacing down quicker. So it's like with each read through or each edit, you're going to concentrate on a different area of the story that's also going to tighten it and make it stronger.
And I think what I want to throw out there too, since we do want to keep this with, give folks tools and stuff like that. I think the important thing to remember is too, you don't have to give your work to somebody you don't have to give it to a Will in order to accomplish this, right? If you give your work for example, my wife is not a writer, but she's a reader, right? If I give her a short story, I will take note of the questions that she's asking me, because as a reader, if she's asking me these questions, like, Will, you're asking Nick certain questions, right? Because you're confused, or you need clarity, or this doesn't make sense. If my wife or whoever is reading this, a partner, a friend, or whatever is reading it, and they're asking you these questions, those are the things that you have to focus on. And if it's a structure issue, then it's time to pull up something like, try to fill out an outline with what you have. You know what I mean? To get some structure around it, to progress the story, right?
Yeah. I mean, and this comes at the end of me pretty much discovery writing the entire thing. Plotting and thinking about things right before I write it. So knowing I have a direction there and taking a little note, right? And so I'm actually going to try the story structure ahead of time on my next novel and seeing if that can get me a little bit better track, if you will. So I know I hit my beats and things like that.
So with longer stuff, even with a couple short stories, I know I've been experimenting with this. I do two things. I kind of do a little world building, but then I also at least fill out half to 3/4 of the 7-point story structure. Just so, because I do like discovery writing, but I also am like, okay, I got to make sure I get to this, and this is the idea I have in my head, and this should happen at some point, right? And so I can kind of muddle my way through that way. That goes back to that Pantliner episode from earlier in our run here, of just like a hybrid between the two, a little outlining in the beginning, bunch of discovery writing, and then maybe having to revisit that outline or that structure after you do a pass,
Oh, well, and it's okay to change your outline.
Oh yeah.
I think so. I mean, obviously I'm a huge fan of Brandon Sanderson. One of the reasons I like him so much is he's posting updates constantly. He's throwing outlines out there, like handwritten outlines that he has, saying, hey, this is what I got. And then like 2 months later, he's like, well, it changed a little bit. Like, this is where we're at now, and these are the things that changed. And he talked about Skyward and Starsight, and I want to say Starsight had 4 different openings that he toyed with. And it's just crazy. Like, he has 4 different openings to a book and things like that. And so it doesn't hurt you if you change your outline a little bit. Just make sure your continuity stays the same.
Well, and if we've learned nothing after talking to, all the authors at the WXR event the other day, our community and just our writing group, I mean, nobody does this the same way, right? And I think it's important to find, for folks listening, is it's okay to take parts of what people are saying and use that, and then make your own way and figure out what works for you, not to get hung up on one thing. If it doesn't work, try something else. There's countless ways to approach writing and world building and structures,
Oh, absolutely. I'm planning on using something else next just to try it.
I don't use the 7-point block structure unless I'm actually going to write a summary for an agent. That's the only time I use that, for example.
Oh, interesting. I actually like that idea.
It's a great way to actually write your summary. And shout out to Catherine Purdy. She's the one who actually taught me that when I was at the Futurescape workshop. And it
like
was
for the synopsis, basically, if you're querying?
Yeah, for the synopsis. Yep. Mm-hmm. If you're querying 7 plot point structure, write that synopsis. And it was a really good way, even if eventually I want to do a book on spec, because I get so huge and people are like, give me a little summary. So lots of different ways.
So what do we want to leave folks with this episode before we transition? So we've had a couple interviews. We've talked about structure. What do we want folks to want them to have in mind as we move forward with some other interviews and some other content?
Well, I would like to talk about Agatha Christie's And Then There Were None.
All right. So what do you want to do? I'm in. Let's do it.
So we're going to have an episode that is going to be released on September 18th. And we are going to do the 3-act structure on Agatha Christie's book, And Then There Were None. All of us, me, Nick, and Marshall, are going to create our own outline by looking through the book and hitting out, like, what was the opening image, the theme stated, the setup, the catalyst, the debate for Act 1. Then we're going to split it into Act 2 and then Act 3. And if you want to follow along, on our website at justkeepwriting.org, we're going to give you a blank document that you can copy and paste onto your computer, and you can read along with us and re-engineer the story, and to see if we've all matched up with the way that we all thought there were certain scenes that were in there. The reason I know all of us wanted to do this is a great way, especially if you want to build in some type of mystery in your book. But also Agatha Christie, specifically with this book, she's really known really well for this book specifically because the twists and turns throughout it. And by studying it, even if you're not writing a mystery, you will be able to create some twists and turns and see how she actually plotted it out. How did she plan it?
Sounds good. I'm stoked. I've never read anything by her, so I'm excited to check it out.
She's amazing.
Same here.
I've heard she's all right. She's written some books or something. I don't know.
She did pretty well in her life.
All right, guys. So anything else for this episode?
Honestly, by the time this episode comes out, you and I will have already done round 2 of NYC Midnight Madness for their Flash Fiction series. So expect to hear back to see if we made it to round 3, guys.
Yeah, I wrote mine quick, man.
If you want to see if you guys want to see what our submissions are, though, check them out on our site, justkeepwriting.org. We're going to put them up there for you guys to take a look at. If you got to give us some feedback, just be nice, okay?
I don't care. Be nice or not, who cares? Feedback is good.
Feedback is good.
All right. So anything else that we're forgetting? So
follow us on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah, follow us on social medias and stuff. And I think the takeaway too, just to circle back to your guys' interaction, I think, Nick, just so people don't feel like, you were like crying in a corner afterwards or something. Like, how did it go for you?
How
did you feel? Did you survive?
He cried.
Yeah.
He cried.
Okay, maybe a little bit. But
he cried and put his pacifier in his mouth.
That's because we'll open up with saying, "Okay, Karen, listen. It really hurt me."
Yeah, that sounds like that.
I'm brutal.
No, the main thing, like, I took a couple days for me to marinate on it and like kind of take it in, because I got Will's comments that he wrote back on everything on the document first, and then it was like a week later before we could get together and actually talk about some things. And so it was a little bit of a mixture, because at first it was like clarity. I need clarity, and it was like why he needed clarity was like, hey, I need to go back and fix this because I don't mention it before. And things like that. And then when we got to actually discussing things, it was like, oh, okay. Well, I know I can answer these questions, but I can't answer these questions. So like my act 2, like it's really only a couple points I can actually fill out right now. And then obviously Act 3, I can't fill out at all because I don't have Act 2 done.
Right.
And so it really opened me up to be like, okay, cool. Like, instead of being this close to writing the end, like, I may still be there, but now I need to fill in the gaps for my next pass through, right? And it goes back to the layering system that I wanted to try. You know, my first layer is word vomit. Second layer is going to be filling in the gaps. Third layer is going to be cleaning some stuff up and getting rid of stuff. But yeah, I felt pretty good. And Will made me not write in this story for a month before he gave me the feedback. So I got some distance from it. So, which I think that helped a lot.
And I think the reason I'm asking you that before we go is if you are afraid to, and this is to our listeners, if you're having some anxiety or worried about, you know, giving something that's fairly rough to somebody to read, just make sure it's someone that you trust. But at the same time, you know, take the questions and take the feedback. Don't take it personally, but take it as a way to improve and get better, you know, and take some space from it. Like you said, Nick, I think is really important too. You know, give it to somebody, you know, let them read it and then come back to it when you feel like you've had a little distance from it too. So
yeah, because I made that mistake the first year writing excuses. Is took my critiques that were a little bit too personal. So
yeah. And I think this is a really good exercise. I'm glad you guys did it, and I'm glad we got to share it with our listeners. So
if it just keeps me writing, I love it.
Perfect.
This has been Just Keep Writing, a podcast for writers by writers to keep you writing. Check out our website at justkeepwriting.org. You can find links to our social media and Discord channel in the show notes, as well as any other links mentioned during the show. If you want to support the show, the best way to do that is patreon.com/justkeepwriting. Thanks for listening.
Now just keep writing.